and to your team for allowing me an opportunity to come and share with my fellow colleagues and students concerning plagiarism and also unpacking the UJ plagiarism policy. Good evening, everyone, my colleagues, my students. You are welcome. Right away, I'm just going to introduce what I'm going to do today with you, or what I'm going to share. I'm going to introduce the presentation, and right away I'll be delving into the issue of plagiarism, trying to define plagiarism according to how UJ perceives it, and also give some examples of plagiarism or types of plagiarism as well as forms of plagiarism. Then I'll move on to look at the procedures, the guidelines, and penalties for plagiarism as stipulated in the UJ policy. Then I'll conclude the presentation by discussing text matching tools. Okay, just to let you know that the plagiarism policy that we are going to unpack is the recently approved one, which was approved on the 10th of June 2021. I'm saying this because when you search for UJ plagiarism policy, the 2013 often pop up. So just make sure that you are using the recent one. And this policy
Good morning, everyone. I'm sorry, it seems Dr. Amanda just had some connectivity issues and has been kicked out of the session. Please just be patient as we wait for her to rejoin the session.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, I had some network cut off there, so I was cut off. I believe that you couldn't hear what I said. So is everything okay? Can I proceed?
Yes, please, we can hear you.
Thank you so much. Okay, I was saying that, you know, for the past 2 years, we had a great challenge in terms of escalating cases of academic integrity that were reported not only in our university, but also globally and nationally. For instance, there was an International Academic Integrity Conference that was held recently, and there were some shocking experiences of breaches of academic integrity that were shared by different delegates. And it's actually very, very scary, the rate at which these cases are escalating in higher education around the world. Therefore, I believe that this meeting is very crucial for both students and staff to remind ourselves of the roles and responsibilities as far as managing academic integrity and plagiarism in particular is concerned, according to UJ policy. Okay, without further ado, let me start by unpacking the concept of plagiarism. So before we can get to the definition of plagiarism, my network is very slow, so please just bear with me. I would like us to note the fact that plagiarism is actually one of the breaches of academic integrity. So not everything concerning academic integrity is plagiarism. So it's just one of the breaches of academic integrity. So we have to note this so that we don't conflate it with other forms of misconduct or other forms of academic integrity breaches. Because as much as plagiarism is a breach of academic integrity, it's also an issue of academic literacies. So we'll discuss that one later, just to highlight what do I mean by that. So what is academic integrity? So academic integrity is a manner consistent with the values and the accepted standards of ethical practices in teaching, learning, and scholarship. And these values are highlighted by UJ policy as honesty, trust, fairness, respect, and responsibility. So academic integrity is very, very complex because of the fact that it is everything and anything that we do in academia. So the picture that you see on the screen there is actually, in a nutshell, trying to explain how complicated academic integrity is. So as I said, there are different breaches of academic integrity, and plagiarism is one of those breaches. So along plagiarism, there is cheating in examinations or assignment. That's not plagiarism, but it's a kind of fraud or a breach of academic integrity. We've got impersonation in exams. Sending someone to go and write for you is an academic integrity breach. Collusion, whereby when you are given a task to be done in a group, there are students who maybe don't contribute, but at the end of the day, they end up, earning some grades. Or in some cases, though you are supposed to be discussing, each and every individual should, at the end of the day, go and write individually. But if a student just write what other people have contributed without even, giving his or her side of the story, that is a breach of academic integrity. The theft of another student's work is also misconduct. Sabotage of other people's or other students' learning or assessment. Contract cheating. So this is becoming very, very scary. Actually, contract cheating is one of the scariest form of academic integrity. I think maybe second after falsification of data. And this is growing at an alarming stage ever since we had some lockdowns 2 years ago. And it's very concerning. We have also falsification of data and fabrication of data. According to the UJ policy, they actually note falsification and fabrication as one form of plagiarism, but it is actually a breach of academic integrity. And this is also problematic when it comes to breaches of academic integrity. Infringement of copyright is also one of those. And in our university, we actually have what we call a DALRO. This is the Dramatic, Artistic, and Literary Rights Organization. So our university has affiliated with this organization so that we can be able to use other material or to reproduce other material, to copy or to make copies of other material. So when you infringe copyright, you are not actually plagiarism. Though there inside copyright there is plagiarism, but copyright on its own is an academic integrity breach. Also, salami slicing. So at some point after collecting data, you might find yourself in a position whereby you want to use a small data set to produce maybe several journal articles. And if you are not careful enough, you might find yourself doing what you call salami slicing. That is, you try to stretch the data set to a point where now you have published a lot of papers which actually at some point replicate themselves. So if you are not sure how much of your data set to use or to publish, rather communicate with the editors of the journals that you want to publish in and explain to them how much already has been produced out of the data set so that they can advise you whether you can still produce or whether you can still publish out of that. So these are, in a nutshell, breaches of academic integrity. So I'm explaining this so that you can be able to situate plagiarism within academic integrity. So I've mentioned that plagiarism is not only a breach of academic integrity, it is also an academic literacy issue. Okay, so what do I mean by that? So plagiarism includes issues of identity, issues of institutional relationships, power, authority, and the diverse writing practices students bring into academia. So, for instance, there are scholars who believe that students who have a Christian background, they actually don't struggle to fit into academia, especially when it comes to academic writing, because the manner in which scriptures are integrated or are quoted when preaching, it is more or less similar, the same way academic writing happens. So you'll notice that plagiarism is treated differently from other academic integrity issues due to the fact that it is an academic literacy issue. So when it comes to responding to plagiarism, you'll notice when we come to a section in the policy whereby the university respond to different types of plagiarism, you'll notice that actually plagiarism is not only a breach of academic integrity, but it's also an academic literacy issue. Therefore, it is responded to differently from other misconducts. So perhaps I should just explain a little bit what I mean by academic literacies. So the concept of academic literacies is defined as academic writing conventions and practices with which students are expected to engage. So it doesn't only refer to literacies within a particular module or subject or discipline, but as I've said, it also incorporates the genres or the conventions of academic discourse as a whole. Now, having said that, let's define what plagiarism actually is. So according to the Webster Dictionary, plagiarism is to steal, and pass off the ideas or ways of another as one's own, is to use others' production without crediting the source, is to commit literary theft, is to present as new and original an idea or product derived from an existing source, and is the act of appropriating the ideas and language of another and passing them for one's own. That is the Webster Dictionary. So the highlighted words in this definition, they are actually legal terms. These are the terms that are used in copyright law, they are used in criminal law, and as well as civil law. So these make plagiarism a criminal offense. Hence, some plagiarism cases are routinely dealt with in courts of law today. So you can see that plagiarism is a very serious criminal offense. Okay, the UJ policy is actually not far from the Webster definition, and it defines plagiarism, or it says a person commits plagiarism when they wrongly represent or pass off or reproduce someone else's words, phrases, concepts, ideas, data, or other work. This can be intellectual output, whether written, visual, or oral, as their own original intellectual work, without adequately acknowledging the original author or source by means of the recognized referencing methods of the relevant discipline. And UJ further in section 4.3 to 4.4, they explain what is plagiarism and what is not plagiarism. And the policy says, it is plagiarism when someone wrongly represents or passes or reproduces another person's work as his own, and it is not plagiarism if text used is acknowledged, or that text is actually common knowledge, or is language, or it's common language, or it's not substantial. So when it comes to common language, it's not plagiarism, and it doesn't need to be cited because it is a widely known, undisputed, or it's easily verified, and is generally not attributable to a specific author. And common knowledge, it includes facts that are known by a lot of people and can be found in many sources. For example, you don't need to cite the fact that President Nelson Mandela was the first Black South African president. Even though you have read that in someone else's writing, for the fact that it is common knowledge, you don't have to acknowledge that person. But sometimes, because plagiarism, it's a sensitive issue. Some people feel like they have to plagiarize each and every sentence, of which is wrong, because over plagiarism can actually weaken your academic writing. That's why common knowledge and common phrases don't need to be plagiarized. So you have to be careful how much you cite, because over citation can as well impact on your academic writing. So when it comes to common phrases, sometimes there's one way to construct a sentence. And some literacy scholars, they believe on what we call a 6-word rule. They are saying that if maybe a sentence that you have constructed, it matches up to 6 words from somewhere else, then that is acceptable. Okay? And also in text matching tools such as Turnitin, they also allow you to set an acceptable number of matching weights, starting from 3, I think, up to a number that you might prefer. Okay, plagiarism comes in different forms and types. Actually, there are two main forms of plagiarism, and these forms revolve around intention. So section 6.2 of the policy is actually very clear concerning the fact that intention is one of the criteria to decide on how to respond to plagiarism. So intention is very, very crucial when it comes to plagiarism. And intention is whether the act was committed intentionally or unintentionally. And intention, again, is very, very tricky, and it's obscure. It's an obscure practice that assessors often experience. And it's unfortunate that this is one of the criteria that we have to use as academics to decide whether plagiarism happened or not. And we often find ourselves between a rock and a hard place when it comes to determining intention. So when it comes to unintentional plagiarism, it is believed that this plagiarism happened because of lack of knowledge of novice writers about what plagiarism is, and also the misunderstanding of writing conventions that are demanded by higher education. So again, this form of plagiarism, it is believed to be committed by beginners, by undergraduate students who don't have experience in academia. So for this reason, usually a response to this kind of plagiarism is developmental. The UJ policy also acknowledged that, and we are going to look at this when we come to the responses of plagiarism by the policy. So when it comes to intentional plagiarism, this is plagiarism that happened with the intention to deceive. And usually there are some disciplinary responses towards this kind of plagiarism. Okay, so also we'll be looking at type of disciplinary responses that the university have in policy. But now I want us to look at different types of plagiarism. So these types of plagiarism, I've actually borrowed them from Turnitin white paper. It is called the Turnitin spectrum. And this, there's a lot of them actually, but I've only picked up the most common types of plagiarism from this spectrum. And these types of plagiarism, some are intentional and some are unintentional. For instance, we've got what we call a clone or the ghostwriter. So this type of plagiarism, it happens when someone just copy and paste the whole text. Maybe if it's an assignment, you just take you use the whole assignment without even altering a single sentence. So this is actually theft. If you take someone's work and you submit as your own or you present it as your own, it's theft, and it is intentional. So scholars said this kind of plagiarism, it actually evokes emotion from readers to say, how can you deceive us like this? Do you think that we don't know? Remember, in academic writing, especially in research, if you're a master's or an honors student or a doctoral student, you are doing research, you have been allocated a supervisor. Your supervisors, most of them are experts in the field that you are researching. So if you are going to take an expert's ideas and ways and present them as your own, they will surely, in most cases, notice that. And in this regard, they will regard it as an, as an intention to deceive, because you undermine. In other words, they might take it as you undermining their knowledge, undermining them in terms of knowing what the experts in that particular field are saying. So that's why Randall here says it evokes some emotions. You know, you can relate. If you are an academic, you can relate to this when you see a student's assignment. Maybe you have put it through, turn it in, and it all comes up highlighted. So there are some disappointments that comes with assessing an assignment that has been plagiarized in that manner. The other type of plagiarism is find and replace. Notice that the picture that I've included in this screen here is not for you to read. The purpose is not for you to be able to read that, but just to see, to have an idea as to what kind of a picture you'll have after you've put a particular text through Turnitin. So in the case of find and replace, it happens usually where you just copy a paragraph or a section of text from another source, you paste it, and you try to replace some keywords or some synonyms. The structure remains the same. So when you put it through Turnitin full source view, it will show the full content of the original source, and it will show exactly which words were replaced. This kind of plagiarism, it can be both intentional and unintentional. So if the student, for instance, is an undergraduate, the student has never been exposed to academic writing, and the student did the patchwork, but the student also acknowledged where they got the text from. This can be regarded as unintentional plagiarism. But in the case of postgraduate students who have been taught about plagiarism, who have been exposed to referencing skills, if they do this, and on top of that, they don't acknowledge the source, this is an intention to deceive. Recycle, or the self-stealer or self-plagiarizer or self-plagiarism, is one of types of plagiarism where you use one's own previous work without citation. It doesn't matter whether you have published that particular article and it's your own idea. At the end of the day, you have to acknowledge yourself. Section 4.8 of the UJ plagiarism policy defines self-plagiarism as plagiarism that occurs where a person represents, passes off, or reproduces their own work previously submitted for assessment or published as a new or original work without declaring that work. This may amount to academic misconduct that may lead to disciplinary action. So the policy is giving an example. It says, for example, where a student submits previously assessed work for which a qualification had been awarded for for the purpose of obtaining another qualification, or where a publication for which state subsidy had already been generated is submitted or original work to gain or to generate state subsidy. So in this case, if maybe, for example, you submitted an assignment in one course, and then when you get into another course, you get the same topic, you cannot just take that assignment and resubmit it for another course. The best thing you can do, communicate to your lecturer if you're a student. Ask for permission to use parts of the assignment. You can't use all of them. You can't use all of it. And also try to re-paraphrase yourself. If your assignment requires citations, you can cite yourself in that particular work. Because if you're going to do this, and maybe your previous assignment has been put through a text matching tool, such as Turnitin, and your current one is also going to go through Turnitin, is going to pick up that, and you are likely to get 100% plagiarism. The mashup or the padlock paper is whereby there's a mixture of copied material from different sources without proper citation. So if you copy different, like you see in the picture, you can see that the sections are highlighted in different colors, meaning that they have been taken from different sources. If this kind of work is done without citation, and maybe by a postgraduate student, that is plagiarism. But it is unintentional if it is done by undergraduate student, and there are some citations that have been included within text. So this might be a problem of academic writing. The best we can do for a student who plagiarize, for an undergraduate student who write like this, is to expose them to academic writing techniques, to expose them to know how to paraphrase, how to summarize. Okay, the 404 error, or the misformer type of plagiarism, it happens when a citation is non-existent, or the source of a citation is non-existent, or there's an inaccurate information about sources. It happens whereby you cite someone who's not actually the bearer of those particular words or texts or ideas. So this comes because of, it happens because of negligent or mismanagement of sources. You know, it happens very often that when you are writing maybe a research, if you don't organize your sources properly, you might find that you have used some of the sources, possibly even those sources, they contain the main argument in your assignment. And when ultimately now you are going to compile a list of reference, you find that you cannot find that source anyway. Sometimes a student can just negligibly say, okay, they might be coming from this particular source. But actually, when investigation is done, find that has been a mismatch. So to avoid this kind of plagiarism, or to avoid this kind of negligence, our university have got a software called Mendeley. It's not Mendeley, it's Mendeley. You can find it on ULink and tools and research tools. So this can actually help you to manage your sources very well so that you don't lose anything and you don't get frustrated at the end when you are now supposed to hand in your research. You start looking for sources all over. And also, Turnitin has got a software called Turnitin Draft Coach. I'm going to talk about this when I come to text machine tools. It's actually an add-on to Google and to Google Docs in particular. It helps you, and the best part about this one is that it helps you to start arranging your sources at draft level. Okay, so you can see where you have missed the source and immediately you can be able to correct that. One other problematic type of plagiarism is called the aggregator or the resourceful citer. So this is a very subtle type of plagiarism. And most people don't even understand why it is plagiarism, because it happens even when you have properly cited your work. But even if you have properly cited your work, but there is no original work at all, it's plagiarism. So this type of plagiarism is caused by lack of voice, and it usually applies in postgraduate students, especially a little bit at master's level, but mostly at doctoral level, and even in article writing. So it doesn't matter whether you have cited, whether you have acknowledged all your sources, but if you don't have a voice within that particular text, that is still plagiarism. And this is a form of unintentional plagiarism. So what you need here is just to develop a voice. So when you get feedback from your research supervisor saying, where is your voice in this? So what? There's this intimidating phrase that the reviewers used to like to use. They will say, so what? So the so what there, it's just subtly telling you that you have plagiarized. You are not present in this text. You have no voice here. We can't see you. So how do you develop voice? Remember, in academic writing, we are producing knowledge. And we produce knowledge through making a series of claims of evidence and citing those evidence and giving the sources to the evidence. So what do I mean by that? When you write academically, language plays a very, very important role. For instance, there are verbs such as very, many, can, could, seems to, tends to, claims, justify, argues, and so forth, that will help you to actually build your voice. And these verbs, they show how confident or not in terms of your position about a particular claim. So let's say, for instance, you are writing about human behavior and how they influence financial decision making. Okay, the first thing you do maybe is go and find sources or articles that have written about this topic. You go through them. So in this case, for argument's sake, let's say you have read an article by Kim, which was published in 2008, and by an article by Vishni published in 2020. So after reading these two articles, you don't just have to reproduce, tell us what the authors are saying about human behavior and financial decision making. After reading them, you have to analyze. You have to try to synthesize what are they actually trying to say concerning this topic. So perhaps after you have went through these two topics, you have noticed that these two writers, they actually say that human behavior can influence financial decision making. So this is a claim you are making as the writer after you have read what other people are saying, after you have read what these two are saying. Okay, so that is a claim that you are making. Remember, I said use language to position yourself. So in this case, I've used can, and I've also added with tremendously to show that I'm very, very certain that what I've read from these two articles is positive when it comes to human behavior that influences financial decision making. They are certainly convinced, these two articles are certainly convinced that human behavior can influence financial decision making. That's why I've chosen my verbs there very carefully. I've used can. If I've used may, it would have been another story. If I've used, it would have been another story. But in this case, I'm very certain. So this is my stand. This is my position. Then where do I get the evidence from? You get the evidence from what these people are saying. That's where now you can say, okay, for instance, Kim or Vishni says that financial decisions are departures from optimality and are usually random and are often self-canceling, and furthermore, among other things, confidence counts the most. So you're giving us evidence to say, I'm not just making this statement. These people are actually saying this, and this is the evidence. Then as a source now, you are going to cite those two authors. So this is basically how you write academically. And then you're going to make a series of these claims, evidence source throughout your text. So based on the example that I've given, a text that has been written with a voice will read like this. Human behavior can tremendously influence financial decision making in several ways. Kim, 2008, and Vishni in 2020 attest that in financial decision making, our departures from optimality are usually random and are often self-canceling, and furthermore, among other things, confidence counts the most. But if the text is written without voice, still based on the previous example that I've given, it will just simply say, Kim and Vishni say that. It shouldn't be says, it should be say, because these are two authors, say that in financial decisions, our departure from optimality are usually random and so forth. So in this case, you are just replicating, you are just paraphrasing what they are saying. You have, as a writer, you don't have a position in this particular text. You don't have a voice in this particular text. So if you are going to do this throughout your assignment or your research, then that's plagiarism at the highest level, at least. And that is done as far as academic writing conventions are concerned. All right, let's move on. So that was the last type of plagiarism. Now, in my opening introduction, I mentioned that plagiarism is actually very serious because it is a criminal offense. So let's look at how serious is plagiarism. It is a criminal offense, and it also impacts negatively on teaching and learning. And this is highlighted in University of Johannesburg plagiarism policy under section 4.7. You should note that in university we teach you about academic writing, right? And when we teach you academic writing, we want you to acquire analytical, interpretative, and evaluative skills, among others. So actually, this is one of the reasons why university students are prioritized for higher positions at the working environment by employees, because they assume that they have acquired those skills through their academic lives. But then when you plagiarize, you are denying yourself to be skilled appropriately. And when you are plagiarizing, just copying someone's work, maybe you present it as your own, you also deny yourself for acquiring knowledges and competencies that are required at the working environment. So as a university, we want to teach you this because we want to be represented well out there. We don't want you just to have a certificate without proper knowledge and competencies behind it. So again, when we teach you academic writing, we want you to eventually develop your own personal writing style. Okay, though this academic writing skill, they don't happen, it's not an event, it takes time, right? But we eventually expect that after you have made mistakes, for instance, at the undergraduate level, as you proceed climbing the academic ladder, you'll eventually learn this and have your own personal style of writing academically. There's a metaphor that one of the scholars use very well when it comes to academic writing and as a process of learning. And UJ actually acknowledged this through, you'll see this when we are getting to the responses to plagiarism, that we do allow mistakes, okay? Because you are at a developmental stage. We want you to ultimately develop this. So when you are at undergraduate level, we do allow mistakes. You can, not that you can, but you might make those mistakes because of lack of exposure, of copying, or of plagiarizing. And this author actually says that academic writing is like a dancer. So when you first learn how to dance, you start by mimicking your instructor up to a point where you become confident to become to become initiative in terms of coming up with your own dance moves. So it happens the same way in academic writing. As a novice, you make mistakes, you mimic other people, but as you proceed, then you become creative and you develop your own personal academic writing style. So it is our aspiration that when you leave academia, you have this. But when you are forever copying and pasting other people's ideas, you are denying yourself an opportunity to become an academic. Okay, please bear with me. Sure, this turned out to be something else. So just to emphasize the seriousness of plagiarism, I've included some real life stories that happened nationally and internationally. And this is a story of the University of California's president who resigned because of a plagiarism scandal. So plagiarism is very serious. So this professor didn't even plagiarize a lot of text, only some few sentences from somebody's speech. And he had to lose his job. He has to also tarnish his reputation. Closer to home, we've got an incident that happened at UNISA, whereby students plagiarized in 2021, and they lost their marks. They were given a 0, and as a result, they failed. So this is not only happening out there, it is also happening in our own institution. So that I'm not giving you examples coming from our own institution, but it happens. So there are some people who don't take plagiarism repercussion seriously until it happens to them. So I'm just saying this to highlight the fact that it is real. You can lose your job. You can actually even be scrapped from the academic role, and your registration be cancelled. So you have to be careful when it comes to plagiarism. Okay, now having said that, let's move to guidelines and procedures and penalties of plagiarism. When it comes to penalties and guidelines and procedures concerning plagiarism in the University of Johannesburg, the academics actually have got a responsibility. They should support, or they should understand how plagiarism is managed and acquaint themselves with the policy, and also make sure that the students are aware of the policy. Okay, at the back of the policy, there's a plagiarism warning document that students need to sign. So academics should make sure that the students have this, and they submit this with each and every submission of their assignments and other assessment. And this warning is only for students that are below honors and below. So for masters and doctoral dissertations, they have to submit an affidavit. And these two documents, they are kind of oaths. So you swear under oath that your work is original, it's yours and yours alone. If you check, especially the affidavit there, it has to be signed by the commissioner of oath. You have to go to the police station to sign that affidavit. So when you say your work is yours when it is not, it means you are lying under oath, and that is a criminal activity. So for students, they should know and understand what plagiarism is. They know and understand referencing. If you don't know this, please know that we've got the library. We've got the writing center. They can actually help you to acquaint yourself with all what is required. And as a student, do not allow anyone to copy your work. Because the minute you give them your assignment to copy, you are both guilty of plagiarism. Not actually plagiarism, but fraud. So what happens when an act of student plagiarism is detected? Okay, so this is what academics should do. So as an academic, if maybe you are marking, you detect plagiarism, you have to make your immediate supervisor aware of it. You assess the seriousness of the plagiarism. Okay, when you assess the seriousness of the plagiarism, you consider the level of the student. Is he an undergraduate or is it a postgraduate? The intention, this is what I've explained earlier on. The magnitude of the plagiarism, okay? Also, the writing conventions of the discipline. Note that plagiarism is not the same in different disciplines. So know the conventions in your discipline. You might be accusing a student of plagiarism only to find that that is actually acceptable in that discipline, course or discipline. Okay, also note whether that student is the first case plagiarizer or they have plagiarized before, and you can get this from your department or from your school, or even from the dean's office. So also the potential legal or reputational risk to UJ. Ladies and gentlemen, UJ is an institution and it's got a reputation to preserve. So don't think that if you plagiarize and the plagiarism you have done is potentially hampering the university's reputation, you'll be left alone. So with the responses to plagiarism, there's a twofold responses to plagiarism according to UJ policy. We've got what we call a developmental or educative and a disciplinary response to plagiarism. So developmental or educative plagiarism, it is only for plagiarism that is not serious in nature. Okay. And the responses towards this kind of plagiarism is counseling. So the lecturer can sit with the student, counsel them, and also refer them to other units such as the library and the writing center. And the supervisor or the lecturer can make a discretionary mark deduction out of that particular assignment. And the student is noted in the faculty plagiarism register. So at this point, the register doesn't serve any other purpose except for records only. So it's only for keeping records. This is not sent to ITS or wherever. It just stays as a record for the faculty. So with disciplinary responses to plagiarism, this is plagiarism. This is a response to plagiarism of a serious nature, and it is divided into 3 levels. Level number 1, when plagiarism happened at level 1, the discussion only happened between the student and the staff and the immediate supervisor. Okay. And okay, I see a hand. Is it an emergency, or maybe can you still hear me? Is everything fine?
Yes, we hear you.
Okay, thank you. I saw a hand. I thought maybe you can't hear me anymore. Thank you so much. So at level 1, I said it happens between the student and the staff, and where applicable, the immediate supervisor. And this is to determine the severity of the plagiarism. So at this level, the supervisor can actually decide on the penalties. That is, if the student also agrees. If the supervisor says they are going to deduct a mark in this particular assignment, and the student should resubmit, and the student is okay with that, then it ends here. But at this point, the name of the student should also be at the departmental records. Then in level number 2, this type of meeting happens with the plagiarism committee, either of the department or of the faculty. So if the student is not satisfied with what happened in level 1, they can escalate this to the plagiarism committee. And then if the plagiarism committee assess the situation and find that no plagiarism happened, the matter or the case is disposed of. So if they find that plagiarism is occurred, that's where a 0 is awarded. Okay, or the plagiarism committee can decide that the matter be referred to student disciplinary committee. It depends on the magnitude of the plagiarism. And when this matter is with the disciplinary committee, it means the disciplinary committee should come up with a penalty. And the plagiarism committee can also decide to say, okay, this student needs to deregister or to deregister this particular module, or they have to cancel this particular module. And in level 3, here now, that's where the severity of the plagiarism is actually beyond level 1 and 2. And in this case is usually the plagiarism that is committed by a postgraduate student or is committed by an undergraduate student, and it's not the first offense for the student. So if plagiarism is confirmed here, the name of the student is placed in the register's plagiarism register, and the findings are recorded in the ITS or in Oracle. So that's where now trouble begins, because this will tarnish a student's image, because it's a record that stays with you forever. Okay, that is in a nutshell the responses. Now let's come to text matching tools. In section 5.1.6 of the UJ policy, they indicated that all practical and available means of electronic plagiarism detection must be used by academic and academic support staff to assist with plagiarism detection, such as Turnitin. Okay, so here the university actually regards Turnitin as a plagiarism detection tool, which is problematic in many ways. I'll explain that later. But then when it comes to text matching tools, we've got plenty of them. Some are commercialized, some are free, okay? But in the university, we mainly use Safe Assign and Turnitin. So Safe Assign is the one that comes with our LMS, our learning management system, which is Blackboard, is embedded in the learning management system. But Turnitin is a third-party software. So what is Turnitin? So I'm going to focus on Turnitin here, because this is the one that we mainly use. So Turnitin is a web-based text matching tool. It is not a plagiarism detection tool, because at this point, there's no tool that can actually detect plagiarism. Only a human can detect whether plagiarism happened or not. So Turnitin, it has got a proprietary search engine that crawls and matches content against current and archived internet, student paper repository, and periodicals. These are all the papers that have put internet in from all over the world. Turnitin is boasting that it is actually catering for about 98% of UK's universities. And the research that I did in South Africa previously, I actually detected also that all the universities that ever mentioned that they use plagiarism detection tools, they all use Turnitin. So the search engine crawls in a wide number of institutions, and it generates what you call an originality report And in the originality report, we have an OSI, an overall similarity index score. And that's where the problem starts now, because people here want to know how much is acceptable plagiarism, kind of in terms of the score that is acceptable, that Turnitin can generate. And there's no acceptable OSI. Turnitin relies on the reviewer to detect whether plagiarism has happened or not. You can be 100% and still not have been plagiarized, or you can be 0% and be 100% plagiarism at the same time. Okay, so these are the features that Turnitin has. We've got the originality report. When you put your assignment through Turnitin, it highlights sections of your assignment using color codings. So this color coding, they guide you to see how much you have taken from particular sources. Okay, they show how much of a document is original. And when you click on the source on your right hand side, you can be able to see how many sources fall under that particular category. And at this point now, if you are a supervisor, your student submitted, and then maybe the similarity score is high and it also matched to unnecessary sources, you are able to exclude those sources. So the minute you exclude them, the similarity index score will also decrease. So what should you do with the originality report? Okay, as a supervisor, you review the flagged test to determine if they were plagiarized, okay? And you can exclude the sources, as I've said, but as a student, you have to revise your writing based on your similarity score. So when you are revising, choose only those, only the codes. If maybe the score is high because of excessive use of codes, minimize that. Choose only the ones that are relevant to your writing. Summarize and paraphrase, okay? Make sure that you cite all your sources properly. And also note that when you are using Turnitin, it usually has got 3 submission attempts. You can do that within 24 hours. But the minute you have exhausted all your 3 submissions, then you have to wait for another 24 hours to be able to resubmit again. Okay, this will depend again on the settings that your lecturer has on the system. So just make sure that you can be able to submit over and over again, just to correct the matches that have been detected by the system. Okay, and note that also, in this case, or in our institution, we don't use Turnitin as a tool to catch students who plagiarize, but we use it actually to develop student writing. That's why we usually give you many attempts for you to correct your assignments or your text if they were matched against other sources severely. So what contributes to a high score? Okay, a high score can be because a student has plagiarized, okay? A high score can also emanate from the fact that a student maybe made multiple submissions of the same document on Turnitin at different sites, okay? A high score can also be because of common phrases, as I've explained them initially, and also because of high volume of sources. If you are writing a dissertation, you obviously have a lot of sources, and the minute you have a lot of sources, somewhere, somehow, they will be recorded, and they will generate a similarity index score. So it's not always about plagiarism, okay? It's about a number of factors. Okay, the other feature of Turnitin is a smart feedback. So a smart feedback, it enables instructors to give feedback to students. And you can also use an audio recorder within the system. You can use text to write feedback inside a student's document. And you can also pre-write your comments, and you just drag and drop. The blue bars that you see on the right of the screen there, those are pre-recorded comments, just to avoid typing every time you are assessing a student. You pre-record them and then you just drag and drop them at the relevant space within a student's assignment. So it can actually save your time as an instructor. So the online grading as well, it helps you to automatically calculate the marks. You don't have to calculate them manually. You can only use online grading if you have a rubric. Firstly, you have to develop a rubric and then populate that rubric with marks for the system to automatically recalculate your marks. And the e-rater is actually meant for students. It helps you with some grammatical errors, such as spelling, preposition, vague sentences, and etc. It can actually be used to develop your grammar and to develop your writing. There's a new software that Turnitin has introduced, and it is called a Turnitin Draft Coach. I tried to look for it. I tried to install it on my laptop earlier, but I'm just thinking that maybe our Center for Academic Technologies hasn't actually installed it yet. But when it is installed, this is going to be a very good tool that will help students to develop their drafts within Turnitin. It's a Google Docs add-on actually that is available on Turnitin Feedback Studio. And how does this software work? You can write your assignment within Google Docs using this add-on. And just like the Feedback Studio, you can be able to submit 3 drafts. And the nice part about this is that you submit 3 drafts before you can submit in the actual assignment space in Turnitin. So you do it aside, and it will highlight the matches. You'll be able to submit for the first time. If it still comes up with matches, you work on your matches, you submit for the second time and for the third time. Then after the third time is then that you can submit your assignment into the actual assignment space on Turnitin. So this is a very good tool. And it doesn't end there. It helps you with your citations and references, as I've said earlier. So as you can see, the first picture there, when you put your assignment through this software, it will tell you how many citations you have and how many references you have. It will actually help you to match your citations to your reference so that you don't find yourself having cited a source that you didn't include in your references. Okay? So remember, there's a difference between a citation and a reference. So a citation happens within text, and a reference is included in the list of reference, which is referring to the citation that has been made in text. So the second picture there is highlighting to you whereby you have made a citation, but you haven't included that citation in the reference list. It will tell you that this citation and that one, you've actually used them, but they are missing in the reference list. So this is a good tool to help you to organize your referencing and citing. Though this text machine tool can be used for developmental purposes, they have some limitations. Okay, For instance, they can't detect plagiarism. That's number one. Number two, they are helpless when it comes to cross languages. Turnitin has got a very limited cross languages that it caters to. So if you're submitting a document that is written in another language, it might not pick it. The scammers are actually taking advantage of these programs. So this is not, I'm not referring to Turnitin in particular, but other softwares, especially those ones that are free and we can easily access them online. So they take advantage because they accumulate the assignments that are submitted on these softwares, and they sell them to paper mills, okay? So that they can sell them to students who come for contract cheating. They also report false positives and false negatives. These softwares, if the instructors are not monitoring them, they can confuse novice writers because they'll keep on changing words to suit the requirements of the system, while at the same time, they are not monitoring whether the meaning still remains the same. So the fact that you can submit and resubmit and change and resubmit, it can ultimately change the meaning of your text. And they can be manipulated in several ways by plagiarists. Okay, there's a lot of things that actually Turnitin go through when it comes to being manipulated. For instance, we've got the plagiarists use what we call homoglyphs, okay? They use particular alphabet letters from other languages, from Latin, from Arabic, that Turnitin cannot comprehend, and as a result, the document can pass through even if it is plagiarized. They use there's an insertion of microspaces. This is between text. They can insert that between text, and then the system is not able to spot that. They also insert white ink or white colored ink. They use particular punctuations. They do involuntary misspellings or typos of some words. And they also use text images. So some of these, the system can spot. And some of these instructors can also spot, especially if students submitted Word documents. Okay, when investigation take place, if the document is placed in Word, they can actually see some of this. So as instructors, please encourage your students to submit Word documents instead of PDFs. Okay, these are some of the clauses that I have picked from policy that I think it is very important that we understand as academics. For instance, Section 8.2 says a disciplinary committee of the university does not have the power to review a decision of an academic structure of the university. So if a case has been referred to a disciplinary committee, okay, but then maybe in that particular case, a dean decides to take a ruling, that disciplinary committee cannot be able to overrule what the dean has said. Simply because, you know, plagiarism, as I've said, it is an academic literacy concept or issue. And as a university, the primary mandate is developmental. So the university is trying to manage this within the academic boundaries. In other words, they're trying to avoid, you know, referring plagiarism cases to courts of law. All right. So they give powers though to some disciplinary committees, but at the same time, bearing in mind that this is an institution of higher learning, which has to develop students. So there are particular decisions that will be made, bearing in mind that particular primary mandate of a university. And also Section 12.1 says if any provision of the policy is or become invalid or unenforceable due to law, such provisions shall be divisible from the policy and regarded as pro non scripto, and the remaining provisions of the policy shall remain valid and enforceable. So as a university, again, we don't have enough capacity to deal with plagiarism policies like criminal cases. Okay, because the aspiration here is for developmental mandate that we have as a university. Hence, we have categories when it comes to responses to plagiarism. When we detect a case, we don't just immediately call the police to say, come arrest a person here, they've committed crime. We go through it, bearing in mind the mandate that we have as a university or as an institution of higher learning. Okay, in conclusion, I would like to bring in, the ideas of one of my supervisors, who actually argues that a university is not a supermarket, but it is a knowledge factory. So students should understand when they come into university that they are not coming to buy, they are not paying their fees to buy their qualifications, but they are co-producers of knowledge. Because when students acknowledge the fact that a university is a knowledge supermarket, instead is a knowledge factory instead of a supermarket, they will actually act accordingly. They'll actually want to use academic conventions in the way that needs to be used, in a way that is honest, in the way that it adheres to all academic integrity values, and they end up becoming valuable knowledge producers or core knowledge producers together with other university stakeholders. Thank you so much. This is the end of my presentation. Do we have any questions? Okay, Deborah, are you going to help me moderate?
Yes, I think we had a few questions. I'm not sure if you had already attended to them.
No, I didn't. Let me just quickly go through.
Let's go back. Yeah.
Okay, because now I'm trying to access the chat here from my side. I can't be able to get it.
Should I read them out to you?
Okay, please read them out because my chat is not active. I'm not sure why. It was when I started, but now it's no longer active.
Okay, let me just go up. All right, Antoinette had asked if students submit via Blackboard, do they still need to attach a plagiarism document? I guess to similarity.
Yes, all online assessments need to be accompanied by a plagiarism declaration form.
Okay, and then moving on from Antoinette, I see she's, that's the second question. Okay. Then we've got Ty, who had to leave early, but he has informed me. Fred and Ron, I see your hands, and one more I will.
Okay.
Okay. To those.
I can see them now.
Oh, can you? Okay.
I can read them as the second one. Sorry, I have to leave. Okay. Could you please elaborate on contract cheating? Clarify that for us, please. It's the first time I'm hearing about that. Could you please elaborate on the six-way rule? Okay, let me start with contract cheating. Contract cheating is actually happening big time as we are speaking. This is an act where you go to paper mills. Paper mills, these are the people who write assignments and dissertations for students, and they sell them at a price. You just give them your topic, they write it for you, and then you buy it. That is the worst academic breach ever. And it is happening in a very alarming rate since the lockdown in 2020 up until now. So that's in a nutshell what contract cheating is. It's buying assignments or paying someone to do your assignment for. It's also called ghostwriting. Someone say, could you please elaborate on the 6-way rule? I've never heard about it also. So the 6-way rule, remember we are talking about common language or common phrases. And I mentioned the fact that sometimes there's only one way to construct a particular sentence. Or there are some common phrases that are used that are common to everyone. You don't even have to acknowledge that. So when it comes to 6-way rule, when you construct a sentence and then it matches 6 ways from other sources, it matches up to 6 ways from other sources, that cannot be regarded as plagiarism. But the minute your sentence matches more than 6 ways from a particular source, that can potentially be plagiarism. And I've mentioned also the fact that Turnitin has got it's not a 6 rule, it's just guiding you to say, okay, as an instructor, when you do your settings, you can say, okay, you'll accept matching words up to 6, but beyond that, you will investigate as potential plagiarism. What happens in a case whereby level 1 was not followed by the department, supervisor, and committee? You know, you have raised an important issue here. When I was doing my research, I interviewed a couple of academics, and most of them, they actually told me that they actually ignore this kind of plagiarism issues, and of which is not allowed. But now, as an ethical individual, whether you are a student or you are a staff, and you notice that a staff member ignored this kind of plagiarism, you have to bring it up to their attention, and also maybe escalate it, because it's not. It's you know when you see a crime happening and you don't report it, you are equally liable. Explain the difference between a reference list and a bibliography. Okay, when we talk about a reference list is all the sources that you have practically used in your writing, in your assignment. So a bibliography includes the references that you have used in your writing, and also the references that you have just you read, but you did not include as citations. Okay. I think that was the last question. I see someone's hand is up. Ron, you can ask your question.
Thank you. I was just thinking as you were presenting, apparently most of these anti-plagiarism software or text matching applications can access certain websites, but we also have the deeper web, or the darker web, as they say, where traditional, which are not indexed by traditional, search engines. And you find you can have a situation where someone may plagiarize from, sources from the deeper web, and the anti-plagiarism software cannot pick. But at the same time, you can tell that this has been plagiarized. How do you deal with a situation like that?
Okay, in that case, Ron, it will depend on maybe the expert knowledge of the assessor. If the assessor can prove beyond reasonable doubt that that particular document comes from a particular source that the assessor is familiar with, then it can be proved. But as you said, that's where now text machine tools are helpless. They will, in that case, we only rely on the knowledge of the assessor concerning that particular field or discipline. And if, yeah.
Thank you.
Someone is, yes, are you satisfied?
No, my worry was, you see, the expert knowledge of the assessor, but at the same time, you cannot concretely mesh that to a certain source. You see, maybe, for example, you are having a student at a certain level, you're also thinking of the disparity between that particular work and probably what that student has been submitting before, the drastic change. You have got all these, reasons to suspect plagiarism, but you cannot pinpoint a source where that student is plagiarized.
Yeah, that is an unfortunate case, because without evidence, you can't actually pin plagiarism on anyone. However, sometimes what assessors do, they track the records or the writing style of a student or a person, and then from that they can see when it drastically changes. But still, even in that case, if you have no evidence to say your text matches with this particular source, you cannot for sure say plagiarism or conclude that plagiarism has happened. That is an unfortunate part of, having to detect plagiarism. But one thing you have to understand as students is that when you plagiarize and you get away with it, it's detrimental to your development. As I've explained earlier on, you are depriving yourself of acquiring certain skills that you have to acquire, or that you should have acquired if you went through the stages and the steps of writing that particular assignment. So please don't think that if you get away with it, we have won. No, you didn't. Okay, there's a question by someone saying, what is a similarity index score? So a similarity index score
I'm not sure what has happened there. Oh, sorry. Dr. Amanda has gotten kicked out. As we wait for her to rejoin, Mwekezi and Mizana, I see your hands. I think once she joins, she'll attend to your questions. Just to let everyone know that we have red flagged June and July now for a plagiarism awareness at the postgrad school. The reason for this is because we are aware that recess will be starting soon, and hence we've decided to also pass it on into the following month. I will be sending out all this information later on. On the 20th of June, we are going to have an inter-university plagiarism panel discussion or webinar. And I think I'll send emails to this group as well. I'll send the invite to an email invitation. We're also going to have the RCD unit collaborate with the Faculty of Humanities and have their own webinar. So what we'll do is try have each faculty or school or college represented. So that will be it for just June. And then in July, we'll have the College of Business, we'll have health science, we will also have student affairs come in. As Dr. Amanda was explaining that, there are levels to it and how UJ undertakes its process in terms of charging you or not charging you with this crime, as she said. So we will have Mr. Derek Bavuma from Student Affairs take you through an information session. So please do look out for more of my emails regarding this plagiarism series. So I don't know, Margita, do you want to ask a question, or but I see Dr. Amanda is still not back. You can speak. You can unmute your mic.
Okay, thank you very much. I actually have two questions. The first
She's
question.
back, so yes, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay.
The first question is on the fact that Doc made a reference to one of the professors who were caught on plagiarism. So now I just want to find out. So if I cited that particular, let's say the work of that particular doctor, and he's caught on plagiarism. So what is the implication of that on my work? That will be my first question. My second question will be on the grammar editing softwares. Every time when you put your writing on the software, they will always suggest maybe some certain words, or maybe for you to construct your sentence in a particular way. Wouldn't that increase, or wouldn't that put me at the risk of plagiarism? Thank you very much.
Sorry, Margit. It seems that Dr. Amanda is still having connectivity issues. But she is here. Oh, there she's back.
I've been talking.
No, I'm not talking. You can have the floor.
Okay. All right. I want to apologize once more for, I'm at campus here, but still the network is horrible. So please pardon me for that. So is there anything that I have to give attention to? Hello, Teboho.
Oh, sorry. I thought I had to mute my mic. Okay, so can you please re-ask your question so Dr. Amanda can respond?
Okay, no problem. I can repeat my question again. I have two questions, Doc. The first one is based on the reference that you made with regard to one of the professors who was caught on plagiarism somewhere in US. So now my question was, if I cited or I've used his work on my academic work, what is the implication of that if there was such a discovery? That is my first question. My second question is based on this language editing softwares that use artificial intelligence. So now, most of the time, they will suggest when you write something on them, they will suggest maybe you construct your sentence in a particular way, or suggest that you change this word for that word. So wouldn't that increase, or wouldn't that put me at the risk of plagiarism? I hope my questions are clear. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir, for the questions. With the first one, which is related to the implications of citing from a plagiarism professor. With this one, I don't have a direct answer for you, but what I can suggest is that maybe you can contact the journals that this professor has published in, particularly with reference to the ones that we have used, and find out if maybe they're going to pull out his work or not. So you can take it from there. If the journals, maybe they decide to say, okay, we continue to keep his work, maybe you can as well keep your work. But I don't have a direct answer for this one. And with the text language or the language editing software, I can't say that you when you use this software you would incur a high similarity index score when you put it through text matching software. But even if that's the case, then you can, you can always come back and edit the language and use your preferred language. So it's up to you. The software is actually just suggesting to you to say, this is how you can construct your sentence. But at the end of the day, the final decision is yours, whether you want to use their suggestions or not. But I've used them before, and I never had a problem when I put my work through Turnitin. Okay, they say hands that is up Mweketsi Rasi Tunza. You can ask your question.
You've answered. Makweti was the one who just had to repeat his question. I think Dumesani, you can please unmute your mic and ask your question, and then followed by Antoinette.
Hi everyone, very insightful session, Doc, and yet a bit confusing here and there. There's always, so we're told as postgrad students that we are not experts, so you can't advance your argument. Instead, you must use the work of other known experts or people before you, because you're not known, so rather cite someone. Now, I see that as being diametrically opposed to, there's a noise that's really disturbing me, as opposed to, diametrically opposed to one, using someone's work as opposed to theirs. So if I use my work, on the one hand, I'm told I'm not known. On the other, if I cite someone, it must be done in a particular way. Otherwise, you will still be appearing to be stealing someone's work. So the question I have is, if we're told, for instance, you are told that you can only use journals that maybe are 4 years old, for argument's sake, and a journal that is 2 years old is citing someone whose work is about 15 years old. At a junior level, we were told to just cited in, so outside the person whose journal I am reading, but referencing someone whose journal is older than 4 years. But now at the postgrad level, we're told you can't do that. So my second question is, does it mean that I therefore cannot cite, even though the journal that I'm reading is 2 years old? I cannot cite someone whose work is 10 years old, even though this was cited by someone who appeared in a 2-year-old journal. I don't know if I'm making sense.
Okay, Dumisani, I think I've heard you. Thank you for that question. Okay, the reason your supervisors or your lecturers are saying that you don't have to mention old work is to ensure that you are engaging in the current trends, you are engaging in the current conversations. Because if you are going to reference to old people, you might find that whatever you are saying is outdated. Now there's a new thing that is happening that you might not know about. And that doesn't rule out completely the fact that you cannot reference someone who wrote their stuff 15 years ago. It depends. If that the person, maybe there's what we call classical writings, such as theories, people who came up with theories, who came up with particular models and so forth. So these people, you can still reference them based on the theories and the models that we are still using today. But when it comes to engaging in a conversation, you should just make sure that the conversation you are engaging in is not outdated. Maybe something else have developed out of that is taking a different dimension, but you are still focusing on the old one because you are not aware of what is happening in the current situation. I hope I'm clear. Dumisani?
Very clear, Doc. I just want to make a follow-up with an example.
Okay.
Okay, so let's say at least the issue of theory is settled. Let's say now maybe a group of scholars, maybe 4 or so, have done a research and found that when they synthesize about maybe 250 journals, there is one common definition of something that they are coming with. But some of the journals that they read are outside this 4-year or 5-year limit. Does it mean that even though I am citing them, I must not say 250 journals, I must say maybe 200 because the other 50 were outside the 4 years period?
Dumisani, it's there are some exceptions. That's why I think it's an 80-20 or 90-20%. I don't remember. There's still room for exceptions. Okay, if you deem that even though this particular manuscript is old, but it's actually resonating with your argument, and there's no any other manuscript that you can get that can do that, you are still allowed to use it. It's not like it should be 100% recent, what do you call it, citations. there's an 80-20 and 90-20. There's still room for that. But the point here is that don't find yourself using a lot of old stuff. And if you can argue that, I remember it happened to me as well while I was doing, is it my master's or doctorate, where I used some old publications, as old as from the 19 something. And then the reviewer came back to say, but why do you use this? When I responded, I explained why I've included those particular articles in my research. And it was accepted.
Thank you, Doc.
The other one was from 18 something even. It wasn't even from the 1900s. It was from the 1800s.
Okay, thank you, Doc. Noted.
You're welcome. Okay, I think when I left, I was responding on a question on a similarity index of UJ. Okay, you know, this is a question that comes out very often, and it is actually a similarity index that is recommended. It's actually non-existent. But I've seen some departments actually saying that, okay, we can accept below this or below that. But in my explanation, I made it clear that a similarity index can be 100. But when someone goes through your writing, they can find that there's no plagiarism because of the reasons that I've already explained. So you can maybe, UJ doesn't have this, okay, as far as I know, but just find out from your particular department. The main thing here is that the Turnitin doesn't detect plagiarism. It only flags the potential plagiarism. It flags the ways that are matching your text with other sources from the internet. So when you see 50%, you don't have to think that's plagiarism. That is just a flag to say, hey, check this particular manuscript. Okay, and when we check, we might find that it's something else. It's not even plagiarism. And sometimes if you are writing an assignment and all of you are using the same structure, the same words, and the designer or your lecturer in the settings, they didn't exclude some phrases or some things, you might find that the first student to submit get a 0, but the last student to submit get a 100% match. So that's why I'm saying a similarity index score doesn't say much. Do you still have questions?
I think Antoinette had a question. Antoinette, would you like to ask a question, or should I just, is it the one that you were asking from the chat where you said, should images, videos, etc. also be referenced when students use them? Or if you have another question, I think you're more than welcome to just unmute yourself and ask your question.
Oh, Antoinette asked about the difference between a reference list and a bibliography. I think I've answered that already.
Sorry,
videos should also.
Yeah. Let me explain. Good afternoon or good morning, everyone. And thank you, Dr. Amanda, for a really, really useful presentation. In my honours courses, one of the things that we're starting to use is portfolios. So one of the tasks in my portfolio or in the portfolio tasks that I've set up is, for example, for students to create a meme, you know, or a YouTube video, or a, you know, some kind of artifact. And so what I see now is that students will use a meme template, or even in their YouTube video, they will take a shot or they'll take a screenshot of something, or an image they've downloaded from the internet and add that to their video. Now, I know that that's how people use this in popular culture, let's call it that, you know, to create mashups and borrow and so on without necessarily giving credit to people. How would I look at that when something like a meme or a YouTube video or a whatever is submitted as part of an academic portfolio? How would they reference that? Is it needed?
Okay, thank you so much. I didn't get the name of the caller, but you actually can do that, and it should be, it's compulsory that that video is acknowledged. So to reference it, usually videos, they've got the names of the developer, not all of them, but most of them. They've got the name of the developer, they've got the year and the month and the day on which they were loaded. So you use that the year and the month that is in the reference list. Use the year, the month, and the day if available. If not available, in brackets you just say not available, and then the topic that is addressed by the video, and the URL, the YouTube URL in the reference. In text, if maybe that it's gonna be cited in text as well, you do the same. Okay, the same name of the developer. If it's a company, the name of the company in brackets and the year in which it was loaded on YouTube. So that is more or less the same way you do when you are referencing text.
Okay. Thank you very much. And if they are creating their own multimedia or their own YouTube videos, but within those videos that they are creating, they use other sections of other videos.
Mm.
So
Okay.
they create their own YouTube videos.
But then they like you said, they do the mashups, like kind of.
They do mashups, yes. So
Yeah.
how would they? So it's not in a text document, but it's in that actual
Yes.
artifact, that actual multimedia, or sometimes it's a meme.
Yeah. Perhaps they can maybe include a voice note to say this video was adapted from this particular YouTubers, and then mention their names. It's important. Just a voice note will do. Or maybe just explain briefly how those videos of those particular people were used in a nutshell. Because if they don't acknowledge that would be very problematic. It doesn't matter even if that video that was used, it was only for 2 seconds, but the fact that they've used that person's video, it should be acknowledged.
Okay, I don't. Dumisani, you still have your hand up? You want to ask another question, or is this an old hand?
I'm sorry, it's the old hand.
Okay, no problem. I think we'll take the last question from Bulelo. go ahead and ask your question. Bulelo, you can repeat.
Smulelo, is that an old hand or you are struggling to access your mic? Maybe Smulelo is on lunch. He forgot to log out. Okay,
Dr.
Antoinette
Amanda
is asking.
Yes.
Can I? Okay, can I answer Antoinette's
Yes, please.
question, or is it the same?
No, it's another
It's
one.
about should images, videos, and also be referenced when students use them? Yes, I answered that. Okay, it says the sound is terrible.
Okay,
Do you have to acknowledge the creator of a template when you use for portfolio purposes? Yes. You have to acknowledge. It's very important to acknowledge. Even when you are writing maybe your own research, okay? Maybe you like the way someone has arranged their topics in the previous research that they published. If you are going to use the same structure, it's acceptable, but you have to acknowledge that particular structure. Maybe for instance, in the literature review, okay? Or it can be literature review, or it can be theoretical framework, and you want to use the very same structure, though you'll be addressing a different topic, you have to acknowledge that. So templates have to be acknowledged. Policies, for instance, if you are going to borrow a lot from another institution's policy, acknowledge that. In my previous research, I examined plagiarism policies and other academic integrity policies from different universities. And I noticed that there were some universities that overhauled some universities' policies without acknowledgement, and that is very wrong.
All right. Dr. Amanda, I think we're at the end of our session. From the RCD unit, I think we should just extend our thank yous to you for agreeing to facilitate this workshop. And thank you for an engaging session to all the participants that have joined and some who have left, of course. Like I had indicated that the month of June and July has been red flagged as the plagiarism awareness month. So please do look out on our website and on your emails for more webinars and sessions on this hot topic. Yeah, I don't know if you have any last words, Dr. Amanda?
No, that's all for me. Thank you so much, everyone.
All right, thank you, everyone. And I think I will stop the recording now. And please do have a lovely day further, and please don't plagiarize. And all the best with your studies for the rest of the term. I think you're all on exams, some of you, and some are busy with their postgrad studies. So all the best, and thank you for attending. Bye.